Welcome back to Real Talk Sports with Rico. Today, I will be your host. Today's show, we are talking about the AFC and the NFC championship game. Depending on when you actually get this content, you should be actually looking at this during the Kansas City and the Ravens game. You also, too, will see this ahead of the Detroit Lions and San Francisco game. So I just want to thank you guys for going ahead and tuning into the podcast. I want to quickly go ahead and thank Spotify, which is now also was known as Anchor, where you can actually find the podcast there. Also, too, I just want to go ahead and thank YouTube as well. You can find us under Real Talk Sports with Rico. All the show notes and links are going to be right there in the links below with the show notes. Also, too, want to thank the sponsors out there for putting sponsorship on the show, guys. So without further ado, let's jump into the content and let us start here with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, which depending on when you are getting this, they're literally about 30 minutes away from playing here. So, I think that this is going to be a fabulous football game. I think that both games this weekend are actually going to come down to the wire. And I think that when you're looking at Kansas City and you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens game, certainly you see how well Lamar Jackson is playing. I think first and foremost, a lot of people would probably agree with the fact that Lamar Jackson is going to be the NFL MVP. I personally think that as well, even though Patrick Mahomes, you can start to put him in that category because it is certainly well-deserved. And I think even Jared Goff probably has that conversation as well. But with this game, Kansas City is coming in. They have 6 straight appearances in the AFC Championship game. This is something that Patrick Mahomes is very comfortable with. They are 3-2. He has definitely went ahead and shed light onto the fact that he can win on the road against one of his nemesis or teams that I would say know Kansas City the most. Baltimore has fared a bit better against Patrick Mahomes, even though the last game that they had was epic and came down to the wire. I believe that Lamar Jackson is 3-1 versus Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is coming in hot. He threw for 131.6 as far as the rating, his highest rating last week. He had 2 touchdowns and 215 yards. And the Ravens, Lamar Jackson's coming into this thing, 821 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground, had a combined 200 yards. He had 2 touchdowns in the air and 2 on the ground last week against the Texans. Gus Edwards, the running back here for Baltimore, he has 13 paint touches. And this is something that Baltimore likes to do, which is run the football. KC, they give up 3.4 yards per carry defensively. Were able to hold Dalvin Cook's brother last week, who plays for Buffalo, to a pretty marginal effort on the ground last week. So Kansas City's defense, I think, is going to be up for the challenge here. And Kansas City's defense, I know that we talked about how elite that they've been the last couple rounds. Lamar Jackson was blitzed 75% last week by the Texans. And that averaged out to about like 43% of the time here that he was basically being pressured in the pocket, and it didn't matter. He still went over 200 and had 4 touchdowns. So, that's something to kind of look for here. As far as Kansas City in the secondary is concerned, they held Stephon Diggs to just 21 yards on 8 targets. So I think that Kansas City probably has the advantage as far as covering is concerned. And, lastly, I think that this comes down to sacks. Kansas City is second in sacks. You're looking at Baltimore, who is first in sacks at 60, and Kansas City, respectively, 57. Kansas City is 10-0 when they scored 27 points or more, or 21 points or more, and they just scored 27 last week. Baltimore holds opposing teams under 20 points the last 5 games of the season. So, lastly, I want to talk just a little bit more statistically with the ratings as far as the tight ends are concerned. Baltimore held tight ends to 81.9, which is the second lowest in the league. And Baltimore has held wide receivers to 73.9 rating, which is third in the league. And so As I get ready to kind of throw out my final synopsis on this thing and really go into what I'm thinking here, with that last stat, this is important because Kansas City is going to have to utilize the tight end. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are top as far as playoff duos with 16 touchdowns in the entire NFL. Travis Kelce happens to play tight end. The Baltimore Ravens happen to play the tight end pretty well. So this is one thing to take a look at for Kansas City and Baltimore today. Patrick Mahomes is wanting to go there. They had 2 touchdowns last week. I think that Travis Kelce is going to have to be involved, just like George Kittle was involved against Green Bay last week, in order for Kansas City to pull this thing off. Now, do I think that Rice and Valdez Scantley are going to make some plays? I think it's going to be tough sledding for them against this secondary. The secondary likes to play a lot of press coverage. Valdez Scantley, he's been on record here for having drops, and he's also more of a deep threat option here. And I'm not sure you're going to get a lot of splash plays if you are Kansas City. The one thing that Kansas City has that I do like is that they have Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco runs as if he is trying to run through a brick wall each and every time that he's actually running. And so, with that being said, guys, I think that this game is going to be a lot tighter than what people are anticipating. And the one thing that I keep hanging my hat on in this game is that the last time that you had a 4th ranked defense and you had a 15th ranked offense like the Kansas City Chiefs do, that team went on to win the Super Bowl. That team would happen to be the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning. And I know that they're probably coming into this thing as not the favorites, but I like Kansas City in this one. I think this is going to be a 34-30 game. Over the last 7 games, the Baltimore Ravens have scored 31 points, and I think it is going to take 30 points. For whatever reason, it seems that Kansas City has gotten hot offensively at the right time. Defensively, they're making enough plays, and I think it was huge that they were able to take away Stephon Diggs. I think if they're able to take away a guy like Stephon Diggs, I think that they're certainly going to be able to take away Zay Flowers, which leaves now Mark Andrews, who's been out with an ankle injury, and Isaiah Likely. If the Kansas City Chiefs can hold them at bay, and then also to slow down Lamar Jackson just enough, because they're not going to be able to blitz. But I think if they can make Lamar Jackson patient and have to pick him apart in the passing lane, I really like Kansas City to pull off the upset here. I really like them to get back to the Super Bowl. I really think that they are that team. And I just think that there's so many things happening for Kansas City in the right direction at the right time. Because a lot of the times that you look at playoff games and you look at championship teams, whether it be the NBA, MLB, NFL, it is getting hot at the right times. And it looks like Kansas City has come together at the right time. The one thing I will say about the Ravens, if they are going to win this, if they're going to go to a place that they haven't been since 2012, and there is a real possibility that this could be the year of the Harbaugh, because Jim Harbaugh won the college championship with Michigan. Maybe this is the time here for the Harbaugh here who's coaching the Ravens to go on and actually win the Super Bowl that he could not win in 2012, ironically. So this is a possibility, but I like Kansas City to win this thing. They're 7-2 on the road. Clearly, they show that the road doesn't shake them. It was supposed to be about an 84% chance of raining. Looking at the preview show right now, I don't see rain out here. And again, guys, my pick is Kansas City 34, and then it is going to be the Ravens 30 here. So bringing up our next matchup, it's going to be the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers in this game. Man, this is if there's going to be an upset in the NFL, I think it's going to be this game. And I'm so really intrigued with the fact of the Detroit Lions and their story, and who couldn't be, right? I think I read something here where now the Detroit Lions are looked at as America's team and it's not the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. It's a possibility, maybe. I just know that everybody likes an underdog story, and there's 2 underdog stories in this. You're looking at the San Francisco 49ers, who lost Brock Purdy last year. He is the most famous Mr. Irrelevant NFL player to probably ever have played at this point in time. And many people in San Francisco feel like in that organization, had they had Brock Purdy last season, they would have gotten past the Eagles. Obviously, the unfortunate situations that happened to them, they lost a couple quarterbacks going into this thing. Thus, there was a rule change as far as emergency quarterbacks are concerned. And it's San Francisco. A lot of the things kind of lined up for them in the right circumstances, the right timing. They went on a losing streak out there. It looked pretty terrible at times. Purdy, you were questioning, was he really a guy that could actually go out there and win a game, or was he just more of like a game manager? I think he's still kind of answering that. And with the Lions are basically the little engine that could. I mean, I think a lot of people really wrote the Lions off for the last, so many years. Obviously, they've been awful. You've always heard that talk that, they were going to turn it around. They had lost star after star, whether it was Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders, who retired early. So, I mean, just a lot of things have happened to this franchise that have really set them back. And so for Detroit to be in this situation is kudos for them. And I think it's going to be a win either way. Now, with that being said, like I said, San Francisco is going into its third straight. This is going to be the Lions' first since 91. San Francisco is third in yards per game. That really starts with Christian McCaffrey, the way they like to run the football. They're eighth in attempts. They're going to really try to punch you in the mouth with the run game first. San Francisco is 11-1 right now when Christian McCaffrey runs for 75 yards. He ran for 98 last week. The Lions give up 6.1 and 4.7 to backs in their last couple playoff games. That 6.1 went to Rashard White. And the Bucks, if you've been watching them, they were probably one of the worst running teams in the NFL. So for them to get 6.1 last week, that's definitely got to be a bit of a concern for the Lions and a bit of a head scratcher. 4.7, I understand that with Kerryon Williams. I think he was arguably one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the league this year for the Rams. But that's one thing that you can look for in this game, that they do have a bit of a leak up front. And it's really interesting, too, because for the average for the year, the Lions had only given up 3.5 per carry. And so they've been extremely leaky over the last two at home. Christian McCaffrey, another guy, as far as the receiving is concerned, he's got over 500 plus receiving. So that's one thing to look for as far as what the linebackers are going to do here with Christian McCaffrey. He seemed to be a little bit of a safety valve for Brock Purdy last week and kind of really got him settled, got him to get down the field for a game-winning drive, which is now under his belt. And so now we flip and we look at Jared Goff here. Jared Goff's coming in. He's extremely hot. He's having a career year. He had 287 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. The Lions are averaging 27 points a game. San Francisco's top 5 against the pass, which I believe the Lions are going to want to lean onto this. They held Jordan Love to under 200, and then they also picked him off twice as well. Brock Purdy has 31 touchdowns to 11 INTs in this one. And really, now that it comes into the prediction time, the Lions have only given up 31 sacks per. And San Francisco, they're fifth lowest against the pass. And I think that a lot of the times, what you're going to see here is that San Francisco can get home on most teams without actually blitzing. And I think that this is going to be a bit of a challenge for them today. I think that it is going to be extremely hard for San Francisco to generate pressure on Jared Goff. Like, it seems to be a really simple formula because Jared Goff is not necessarily a mobile quarterback. He never has been. But the memo, I think, around the league is put pressure in his face or get pressure in his face, and then you cause him to make mistakes. That theory happens sometimes, but for the most times in his career, he has played behind good offensive line. You look at the Rams situation and you look at what he's going with now with the Lions, who is third fewest in sacks. I think the Lions have an advantage there. I think that the Lions also are going to have an advantage in the run game. Last week, Aaron Jones rushed for over 100 yards. They have two running backs, and David Montgomery and Jamar Gibbs. Both of them can do multiple things in the run game. David Montgomery is a bit more of a punishing force. Jamar Gibbs is a bit more, he is physical, but he's a bit more fluent in the outside game. But both can operate in the stretch game. And I think that this is what Greenlaw, Warner, those guys really struggle with, that stretch game. And I'm not sure what it is with the San Francisco 49ers and why they have struggled so much with stretch plays. They seem to be a little bit undisciplined and they get out of position. I think that, in looking at this, I feel like that's a real advantage for the Lions. I think that they're going to be able to lean on that. I think that that's what kept the Packers ultimately in the game, is that they were able to lean on Aaron Jones. And I think had they had a little bit better quarterback play, and I'm not saying that Jordan Love was terrible, but by any stretch of the imagination, and I know that this is a new game, but keep in mind, guys, Jared Goff was one quarter. That's just one quarter away from winning the Super Bowl. So he has been to a place that Jordan Love had not been to. And out of the quarterbacks so far that obviously San Francisco has played, this guy is the most experienced, and he is, I think, primed and in a great position here, because as they go to run the football, it's going to open some things up for Jared Goff. And I said this last week. Jared Goff is first amongst the blitz and he's last amongst the blitz. And it's a weird situation. So what this means is that if he beats your blitz, it usually ends up in a touchdown. If you get home against the blitz, he usually throws an interception. I just talked about how good the offensive line for Detroit is going to be. So I think that that's going to mitigate that. Thus, I think the Lions are going to keep San Francisco chasing points. Remember, even with Purdy going down last week and getting the game-winning drive, Jordan Love was driving down the field and he just threw an interception. Great defensive play. But if that were Jared Goff, with the weapons that he's going to have with St. Brown, with Laporta, right? And I get it. San Francisco is in the top 5 against tight ends, and that seems to be where Jared Goff wants to go. He still has Williamson. He still has, again, St. Brown out there. He's got his running mate Reynolds, who's come over from the Rams. So he has so many different options, and I think that this is really going to stretch San Francisco from a dynamic standpoint. Both of these teams haven't played this year, and I like the Detroit Lions to win this. I think that the Detroit Lions come in much like the artist and the poet Eminem would say, they come in and they lose themselves and they really get lost in this moment. And I think that they are really playing with house money and they're playing with an entire city behind them. And I think that the Detroit Lions are going to do the unthinkable and they're going to win this game 28-24. I think it is going to come down to the last moments. And I think that it's going to be a situation where I trust that Gambling Dan is going to be able to keep the San Francisco 49ers chasing points all afternoon. So I like the Detroit Lions to win this 28-24. And with that being said, guys, that is today's show. Really, I just wanted to go ahead and get the predictions out here for the NFC and the AFC championship games. I hope you guys enjoy the games here as we are just moments away from the kickoff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Definitely press like and subscribe and follow if you like sports content like this. Make sure you pay attention to the shorts as well, guys, as we actually have been recapping these playoff games. And we'll be throwing up some stuff here on a weekly basis about the NBA. I know I've been promising you guys content, so more of that is coming, especially as we get ready to head into the All-Star break. So For Spotify, which is where you can find the podcast, you also can find us here on YouTube at Real Talk Sports with Rico. Want to thank the subscribers and the fans out there for following, guys. That really helps us and is helping us drive content and stories to the channel. So for myself, this is Rico, Real Talk Sports. Guys, enjoy the NFC AFC Conference Championship weekend. Got special shows coming up for you, especially for the Super Bowl. Rico, Real Talk Sports, we're out. I'll see you guys.